All right, well, good morning, class. My guess is it's a Monday or Tuesday that you are watching this. Today, we're going to finish up a couple lessons today and tomorrow in lesson or chapter 7 that was not on the test. So, these lessons, you're just doing the work. Everything is combined together. So, this is just one video. It will have the notes, the CFU, and the learning target all in it all together. So I'm just trying to do this a little differently the last couple lessons just to even try to make things a little bit easier for all of us. So our hope and goal here today is we have a simple learning target today. We are still working with these quadratic equations. Okay? So we want to be able to solve quadratic equations, and we want to do it by this process that is called complete the square. So this is a really cool mathematical process that can help you solve quadratic equations algebraically, because the difficult part is it's really hard to solve an algebraic equation when you have x squared and x in it. You have two different x's that you can't combine together. So even if you move one to the other side, it's just like, okay, I square root, now I'll have the square root of x. It gets really messy, and there's really no way to get rid of it straightforward, or at least by some of the tools that we know. So what we want to do is kind of show you how we manipulate it algebraically by this process by first noticing some patterns. Okay? So I purposely created these three quadratic equations because they have a very interesting pattern to it. So for instance, in the earlier part of 7, you were doing factoring. Okay, so remember how we would do factoring. So we just have this equals at the end. So I'm just going to factor this piece right here. So if you remember how we factor, we look at two numbers that multiply to the last that add to the middle. So I'm looking at two numbers that multiply to 9 that add to 6. Well, most of you probably figured that out, that's x plus, or that's 3 and 3. So we can rewrite this as x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 0. Okay? So now, if I look at the second one, same process. Factors of the last number, so that multiply to 25, add to 10. That is 5 and 5. Some of you are starting to already see the pattern. Oh, the factors, were the same number. Well, what about this one? Factors of 36 that add up to negative 12. 6 and 6, but that's positive 12. So negative 6 and negative 6 still multiply to positive 36, but make negative 12. So watching your sign, very important. So what the pattern hopefully we notice here is that the factors are the same. So now, what's neat about this is what you can do is rewrite these factors in this form. X plus a quantity squared. Meaning when you have two of the same things written together, remember that x times x is like saying x squared. So x plus 3 times x plus 3 is like saying x plus 3 quantity squared. Just like this one here, this one's like saying x plus 5 quantity squared. And this one here is like saying x minus 6 quantity squared. Okay? So what's nice is all of a sudden, instead of having two x's here, x squared and an x, we've rewritten it and there's only a single x. So now, since it's equal to 0, you could square root both sides, move the 3 to the other side, and you got your solution. So this is known as completing the square. Okay? So now, here comes the issue. What happens if the quadratic equation does not factor? how do we go about doing a problem like this? X squared, say if I had plus 6x, and instead of being a 9 here, say if it was, say, a 7. How do we go about solving this one? It doesn't factor. Okay? So we have this method called completing the square. What we're going to do is find out the number that actually does it. So here are the steps that we do. So it says move the number, the value without any x's, over to the other side of the equals. So like if I'm doing this one that I have right here, that first step, what it says for you to do, take this number and simply move it to the other side. So I have x squared plus 6x equals negative 7. Now notice how I left a little space. That is very important because now we do this process called complete the square. What does it mean to complete the square? First thing you do is you take half of the number in front of the x term. So the number in front of the x term is 6. It says write it down below. Half of 6 is 3. Okay? Then it says take this value and square it. Well, 3 squared is 9. Add this value to both sides of the equation. I'm going to add 9 here. I'm going to add 9 here. Now, the reason why you now do that is on the left side of the equation in step 3, you can now write it in this form because factors of 9 that add up to 6 are 3 and 3. That's why I like to write that 3. So this is like saying the factors x plus 3, or x plus 3 quantity squared. Okay? On the right side of the equation, it says to combine like terms. So negative 7 and 9 make 2. So now, step 4 says solve for x by doing inverse operations. You'll have either 0, 1, or 2 solutions. So what happens is, if this number here ends up being a negative, you can't take the square root of a negative number, so you get no solutions. If this is 0, square root of 0 is 0, you're going to end up with just one solution. But if you have a positive number, you're going to have 2 solutions. So now, I have to get rid of the square by square rooting. Now remember with square root, plus minus. So now I have this x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 2, which doesn't simplify at all. So now, to finish this up, I move the minus 3 to the other side. So I get x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 2. And that's my answer. I can't combine those together, and I'm set. So the last thing it does ask you to do is to check your answer. So if I wanted to check my answer, one of the things I could do is I can plug it into this equation. So what I can do is I can start with negative 3 plus the square root of 2, okay, and close the parentheses. Okay. That value has to be squared, plus 6 times negative 3 plus, and then I'm going to put in here the square root of 2. Whoops, have to square it, don't I? Whoops. Let me delete that little piece. So square root of 2, whoops. Always this calculator's being a little touchy there. Okay. And then I have to add 7. So now if I did this right, if I hit enter here, I should get 0, which is what it equals. So I can plug in the minus version of it, and it should also be 0. So you can always check your answers at the end. All right, so if we go to our next page, up at the top, it says let's follow the process and solve the following quadratic equations by completing the square. Okay? So remember the first step it said to do was to take this number and move it to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I get x squared plus 8x, leave a little space, equals 9. We'll move this up just a little bit just to make it a little easier for me to write. Okay? So now I need to complete the square. Remember, it goes like this. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So what's nice now is this factors to x plus 4 times x plus 4. So that's like saying x plus 4 quantity squared. 9 and 16 make 25. So now we just need to solve it algebraically. Square root both sides. So I get x plus 4 equals plus or minus, can't forget that you're doing plus or minus, square root of 25 is just 5. So now I need to subtract 4. So I get x equals negative 4 plus or minus 5. So x equals negative 4 plus 5 is 1. Negative 4 minus 5 is negative 9. And I got my 2 answers. All right, I'm going to speed it up just a tiny bit. So take the number, move it to the other side. I'm going to add 14 to both sides. So I have x squared minus 10x equals 24. All right, let's complete the square. Half of negative 10 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is positive 25. So add 25 to both sides. So now I have x minus 5 quantity squared equals 49. Because 24 and 25 make 49. So now, square root both sides. Don't forget plus minus. They're kind of nice. X minus 5 equals square root of 49 is just 7, plus or minus 7. So now I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So x equals 5 plus or minus 7. So x equals 12, or x equals negative 2. All right, let's take a look at our last example here. So, same process, move the 8 to the other side. So subtract 8 from both sides. So I have x squared plus 6x, I'm going to leave a little space, equals 6. Let's complete the square. Half of 6, 3. 3 squared is 9. So add 9, add 9. So x plus 3 quantity squared equals 15. So now I'm going to square root both sides. Square root, plus minus. So I have x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 15. So I subtract 3 from both sides. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus. Square root of 15 doesn't simplify. So sometimes you're going to get an answer from time to time where you have a square root still left in it. All right, so that's the notes section. So now for your CFU and your worksheet, we just have few sets of problems for you to do. So for the CFUs, as it says, let's do these together. So if you have your notebook out or a piece of paper out, whatnot, these are the problems that I asked you to turn in. So there's going to be 6 of them total that I'm going to want to see that you submit. So let's get started on the first one together. So again, you can go ahead and do it along with me. Maybe work ahead and watch me do it at the same time. So again, move that number to the other side. So subtract 7 from both sides. So I have x squared plus 12x equals 20 minus 7 is 13. Complete the square now. Half of 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. If I add 36 to one side, I have to add it to the other side to keep it balanced. Now this x squared plus 12x plus 36, the reason why we wrote the 6 down there, because its factors of 36 that add to 12 are 6 and 6. So it's x plus 6 quantity squared. 13 and 36 equal 49. Square root both sides. We get a plus minus. So I have x plus 6 equals plus or minus 7. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So I get x equals negative 6 plus or minus 7. So let's see, x equals negative 6 plus 7 is 1, or negative 6 minus 7 more, minus 13. We got ourselves 2 answers. All right, that takes care of the first one. Let's do the second one here. Same process. Let's add 7 to both sides. So moving that 7 over. X squared minus 16x. Leave some space equals 17. Complete the square. Half of negative 16 is negative 8. Negative 8 squared is 64. So I'm adding 64 to both sides. Notice that even if this is negative, when you square it, it becomes positive. Just be careful with that. All numbers that are squared, whether they're negative or positive, are always a positive result. So now it factors. Factors of 64 that add up to negative 16 are that minus 8 equals 17 and 64 make 81. All right, so now let's square root both sides. Again, plus minus. So I have x minus 8 equals plus or minus square root of 81 is 9. So now I'm going to add 8 to both sides. So I have x equals 8 plus or minus 9. So x equals 8 plus 9 is 17. Or 8 minus 9 is negative 1. All right, last one of the CFUs. I'm going to subtract the 5. So I have x squared plus 4x equals, leave a little space, just 1. Let's complete the square. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So I got to add 4 to both sides. So now this factors to x plus 2 quantity squared equals 5. So now square root both sides, plus minus. So I have x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 5 is just as such. That one doesn't simplify so nicely. So subtract 2. So x equals, we just put that number in front, negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. And that's it. Because it's negative 2 plus the square root of 5 and negative 2 minus the square root of 5. All right, so for the assignment, I want you to do these 3 problems. So take a second, pause the video, and do these 3 problems on your own. Then when you finish them, go ahead and unpause the video and check your answers as I go through them for you. All right, let's take a look at your answers and let's check to see how you did. So I'm going to quickly kind of run through the steps. So here again, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So I get x squared plus 6x, leave some space, equals 27. Complete the square. Half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So now this factors to x plus 3 quantity squared equals 36. I'm going to square root both sides. So x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 36 is 6. So now I'm going to subtract 3. So I get x equals negative 3 plus or minus 6. So x equals negative 3 plus 6 is 3. Or negative 3 minus 6 is minus 9. All right, let's take a look at the second one. Same process. Let's add 8 to both sides. So I have x squared minus 12x equals 28. Let's complete the square. So half of negative 12 is minus 6. Negative 6 squared is 36. Add that to both sides. So now this factors to x minus 6 quantity squared. That equals 64. 28 and 36 does. So now I square root both sides, plus minus. So x minus 6 equals plus or minus 8. So now I just add 6 to both sides. So I have x equals 6 plus or minus 8. So x equals 14, or 6 minus 8 is negative 2. All right, last one. Subtract the 6. So x squared plus 8x leaves some space equals 3. Complete the square. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. 16 to both sides. So now this factors to x plus 4 quantity squared. 3 and 16 make 19. Let's take the square root of both sides. Don't forget plus minus. So I have x plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 19. Doesn't simplify. So now I just need to subtract 4 from both sides. Remember, when it's like this, we just put the number in front. X equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 19. All right, that takes care of everything for 7.4. Don't forget to submit these 6 problems to me so I can give you your 10 points for lesson 7.4. Hope you have a great day.